Welcome. This is Easter Sunday on DSTV. We have a full day of shows for you, including yoga, cartoons, and of course, plenty of music. But first, we'll kick off the day not with telly, but some radio with In the Key of She, featuring the music of Johanna Bramli and in conversation with Professor Sam Warren.
The track playing us in today is Trish Complete's wicked edit of Craig David's 7 Days. I promised her that I'd give it a feature on the show because she was kind enough to take part in an interview for the research project. Fascinating lady, and you can read all about her story soon on the In the Key of She blog at www.inthekeyofshe.org. This show explores the world of electronic music production from a female perspective. And today, my guest is Joanna Bramley. Joanna was born and raised in Belgium and has Swedish heritage, but is now a Brighton-based music producer. And she has so many hats that I'm not sure how she fits them all on her head. She's a music tech lecturer at the South Coast of England College. She's a singer, composer, a songwriter, a band member. She writes music for contemporary dance productions, and she's also a solo artist in her own right, as well as a member of the very interesting vocal choir, The Larsons. She's also co-founder of MAMI, which stands for Mothers Across the Music Industry. We're going to hear about all of those projects in today's episode. As usual, there'll be a mix at the end from Joanna, but it's a little bit different this time because, as you're going to find out, the range of influences that Joanna has is very eclectic, and I challenge any DJ to mix them all together into a seamless whole. So we have a blend of tracks to finish off the show. Before we kick off today's show, I just want to give a massive shout out to everybody I met at the Meets conference. That was the Meet She Said So conference in Portugal at the beginning of October, which was the first female forward music conference ever to be held. And definitely not forgetting everyone I met at the Amsterdam dance event a week before last. I've just about recovered from what I now understand is ADE flu. What an amazing 5 days that was. Our panel went brilliantly on the first day. It was called The Only One in the Room, about gender inequality in the music industry behind the scenes. And that was in collaboration with the Association for Electronic Music, the Association for Independent Music, 720 in LA, and DJ Mag, and it was absolutely fantastic to be on an opening panel at ADE. Big thanks also to everybody I hung out with for making me so welcome and showing me such a great time. Thanks to all the DJs and the artists and the parties that I went to, all in the name of research, of course. So that's quite enough from me. Let's get on with today's show and introduce Joanna Bramley. And thanks to Trish Complete and Craig David for playing us in. Hello, Joanna. Welcome to In the Key of She with Sisu Presents.
Hi, nice to meet you.
It's wonderful to be here, and for the benefit of listeners, I am sitting with my back to the biggest rack of modular synths and keyboards and flashing lights.
I've never counted how many keys there are in this room, but I think it's quite a lot.
It's very impressive. It's certainly a good environment to be recording this. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. It's really, really cool to have you as a guest, because one of the things I've been realising doing this project is the sheer breadth of electronic styles of music and the kinds of things that people are doing. So I understand you're doing lots of different things related to electronic production. So tell us what you're up to.
Yeah, so I have a few sort of creative projects. I've got one project that's a solo project that I just run under my name, so it's Johanna Bramli, and that's kind of me mixing a lot of different things like found sounds, so field recordings, granular synthesis, and manipulation of my vocals. And I think with that, I'm kind of trying to bring a bit of a pop element to the noise electronic scene, I suppose.
Uh-huh.
And then my other project that I sort of like balance this with is my band, which is called Frost, with a umlaut on the O, and that's a duo in recording and trio live, which is kind of electronic motoric pop, I suppose. And in that one, I'm kind of doing the opposite, where I'm kind of trying to bring elements of experimentalism into the pop world, I suppose. So I'm finding myself always on the fence between pop and noise, but all sort of within electronic production.
And some people would say that some pop is just noise.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. And actually, what I'm going to suggest that we do, which is something I've not done before on this show, is go straight to some of your music.
Sure.
So is there a track that you would like to play that really sort of sums up your solo project?
Yes, I think probably a track called Spirals, which is of my first EP that came out last year. And in there, it's a lot of sonic sort of soundscapes, but also sort of heavy, not really rhythms, but beats that aren't really in time. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay. And how did that track come about?
I think for that record, which is just a 5-track EP, and I'm working on the second release now, a lot of the initial sounds started with field recording. So I often carry around either a Zoom recorder, or I've got some binaural microphones as well. And
so you put them in your ears?
So you put them in your ear, so it sort of records
wow.
Your surrounding.
What you're hearing.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's very cool. I have never heard of these. I have so much to learn.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you can have them just as a sort of a cheap option in sort of in-ears microphones, or you've got the Sennheiser heads as well. I don't know if you've seen those. So it's so I'm doing the shape of a head, but a head which is a microphone, and that picks up as well the sort of.
Wow. So you put this track together, Spirals.
Yeah.
Using
so
those
it's usually
bits
comes
of kit.
with. It starts off with some kind of environmental recording, and then I use a lot of sort of granular synthesis. So with some recordings, I might use, I use a lot of sort of time stretchings and things like that to sort of go quite into each of the sounds and sort of pull them apart.
How you got into music. What's your musical history?
I started playing music when I was very little. My mum is a drummer, and was sort of making her own music as well when I was a child. So it was always a very important part in the household. So I started playing piano, I think, when I was 2 years old.
2?
Yeah.
Gosh.
And I'm not a very good pianist these days, so it doesn't mean anything starting early, I don't think. But yeah, so that was always sort of around. I started doing xylophone as well. I was playing a lot of that. I grew up in Belgium, and so that's why I was doing that, and then got really disinterested in music. I was very much into dance, which I have actually come back to, but as a composer. But in sort of my mid to late teens, it was music was absolutely not a focus. But because it was so important in the family, I sort of promised I was going to stick to one instrument, and I decided that singing was going to be the easiest one.
Right.
Little did I know, but that's kind of how I got into that. So I was allowed to sort of ditch everything else and take singing lessons, and it's only a little bit. Well, I went to study music at university. I sort of like just before going to university I came back to music, and that was, I suppose, through playing with other people. That's kind of when the love of it sort of reignited. And I was always interested in electronics, but I think I felt a little bit frightened by it. I remember, what was the name of that software that I was trying to use? Opus, what was it called? I'll try to think back of it. But I remember just opening this up, and this would be in the mid-late 90s, and just being absolutely terrified of it.
Right.
And, to me, that didn't come naturally at all. So I was always attracted to electronic music. At that time, I was listening to a lot of sort of trip hop, Massive Attack, Portishead, and things like that, and Radiohead, and that was sort of the music of my formative years. And then also all the sort of minimalists, I suppose. I was listening to a lot of Steve Reich and Philip Glass and people like that. But the music I was making was not yet using electronics, and I knew I wanted to, but I had this kind of fear of it, I think. Then I went to study at Goldsmith in London,
Nice.
and which was a great experience. But again, I did a lot of sort of musicology and history of, and more of the performance. But again, I didn't set foot once in a studio, or at least not in the driving seat. And
well, that's interesting. So when you did set foot in a studio, what was the capacity that you were there?
It was a session, I suppose. I was there either as a songwriter, co-writer, sort of writing top lines and things like that, or recording vocals or keys and things like that. And I finished university, and I realized that by that time I didn't know how to use any recording gear. I didn't have any experience either of DAWs, and so I had a few negative experiences being a young woman working in studios and sort of being talked down, and the jargon was being used but I didn't understand, and I knew what I wanted but I didn't know how to express it. So after my degree, I said, you know what, I really need to fix this. So I heard about this course in, which I knew there probably were loads, but I just heard about this one course at Northbrook College in Worthing, where I'm working, that did just a quick 1-year fast-track course in music tech covering the computer-based production and recording. And this was a BTech course, so I was... I don't know, 23 by then, but with a lot of 16-year-old sort of like drum and bass boys. and that just gave me sort of the confidence and the tools to finally get over that stupid fear, really.
Well, you say it's stupid fear, but it's only stupid when you look behind you, isn't it?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So I wish I did that before, but I'm very glad that I sort of followed my, gut feeling of like, not letting that carry on and do something about it.
That was kind of mid-2000s, was it?
Yeah, 2003 that would have been, yeah.
So how did it feel being in a class of 16-year-old drum and bass boys?
Yeah, that was fun, actually. It was at the time where I think not that many people were self-taught yet with all this. So actually there was loads of more mature students, if you wish, in the class as well. And we were 2 girls in a group of maybe 15 boys or something like that. I don't know if that's changed so much. But
the statistics sadly don't bear this out. And I think this is one of the things that this project is moving to looking at, is at what age do we have to start inspiring girls, because just as you said about the teenage years, I think by the time we get to teenage years it's too late. The fear set in. Very true. Tech is for boys, and it's
absolutely
so you'd completed your BTech as a mature student with a lot of boys and young boys, and so what did you do next?
So then because I was older, I suppose, and I became friends with the teachers who were kind of my age as well. And I was just looking for work as a musician and just wanted to do my own thing. And they were actually looking for a singing teacher and somebody to teach 20th century composition, which I had just specialized in at Goldsmiths. So I just fell into teaching the following year. I sort of did like a day or a day and a half or something like that, whilst sort of pursuing my own musical career on the side. So that's always been something that I have done in parallel, teaching and creating, and in fact working in this. I was the first female member of staff in the music department, and very, very few female students as well. But that's been good, and we have now a little bit more female members of staff as well. We're 3 out of 20 or something like that, but all part-time.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Although most people are part-time, I suppose, because we all have careers as well that we're sort of
in the music
department. Yes, in my department. So I actually working there, I learned even more than I did on the course. So being around the technology day to day, the new gear that would be coming in, it sort of acquainted me so much more with the technology, whether it's hardware, software, and everything on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So what was it you were taught on your BTech? Which DAW were you taught?
Mainly Logic, a little bit of Pro Tools as well. At the time, it was a little bit of Cubase as well. And then I just didn't know anything about compressors. I didn't know anything about all these sort of things. So it was also looking at synthesis, understanding what that is, and
how was your journey into hardware then, into the more hardware analog sound? how did you start producing, I guess is what I'm
I'm trying
asking.
to think, actually. I'm absolutely not a sort of techie person. I wouldn't. I'm not that interested in gear. Actually, I'm more interested in sort of the creative process, and I just fall in love with sounds and things that make sounds. And so I haven't got. I know a lot of producers and. Who are really sort of like their starting point is that the gear that is around them. But I'd say that, yeah, I don't know. How do I put this? Yeah, I don't really have that interest. It's kind of, there's a few tools that I sort of use all the time that I'm sort of fall in love with, but I haven't got that real love, I suppose, of the sort of analog gear or things like that.
So tell us the tools that you fell in love with, that you do use.
What is it? So I work a lot with textures, and I like to manipulate actually natural sounds through technological textures. So another project that I've got is a 7-piece all-female noise and feedback choir called the Larsens.
Wow.
So Larsens, in French, you know, when you get the feedback sound, that's called a Larsen. So we are the Larsens, we are the feedbacks. And we all wear these black wigs, sort of like with this fringe, all look the same. We have this weird makeup on. We all wear black. It's quite this gothy, sort of ritualistic experience. But why I mentioned it is because the point of it is to manipulate our voice. So I love the sort of conjunction between the pure natural sound of the human voice, but then going through synthesizers, going through guitar pedals, going through amps that we are then totally distorting and things like that. So it's more the processing that I'm kind of interested in, as opposed to the source of the sound in itself.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So one of the things, it's very simple. I've got 2 in this room. I'll try to... is the Boss sort of pitch shifter and delay unit, and I just run everything that I've got through that. So when I do my live sets, that's sort of my auxiliary, so all my inputs go through that, and it just creates for me like these really lush sort of textures, but that I can also really distort.
And it's with I'm looking at your gestures here. Are they wheels or dials?
The knobs.
So they're knobs that you turn,
Yeah.
and you're just listening as you're performing.
Yeah, exactly. So sort of.
And you said there's seven voices in the choir.
In the choir, so we each use our different sort of station. So I use that, for example, and guitar, sort of like fuzz pedals and distortions, and somebody else might be putting their vocals through a synthesizer and sort of like playing their voice, but like also through loads of effect. I used to have like this little intercom that I would be putting my voice through as well. So I'm more gadgety, I suppose.
But it's all about the sound.
It's all about the sound.
And just listening and whatever allows you to make those sounds is fine.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And is there other recordings of this? Is it purely a live project?
There are recordings, but I'm not really satisfied with any of them because it's a real sort of installation performance, an experiential thing. It's got the sort of a surround sound effect because we often perform surrounding the audience as well. And then so you can hear us through our individual, we've got sort of little practice amps that we use to create the sound. We don't go through a PA or anything. So I've got some.
So this is a clip from the Larsens, and as Joanna's just explained, you really don't get a sense of how it must feel to be in the middle of this weird and ethereal landscape that's being created by the processed voices. But if you're listening on headphones, maybe you can get some sense of what it's like to be in this. I'm intrigued the interfaces between the musician and the sound. Having played with synthesizers myself, and having I played with a really cool bit of kit by Rolly, the Seaboard. I felt completely different making sound with that than I did with anything I've ever used before.
Definitely. Anything that's sort of more tactile and physical, I'm very responsive to. I can show you one little bit here. This is so my husband is also a musician and a producer, and this is a sort of a birthday present, I guess. So this is a little wooden box that has got sort of a corrugated wood.
It looks like hardboard. The back of the rough side of a piece of hardboard on the top.
Right, and it's got an old paper clip attached to it.
Yeah, one of those big old bulldog clips you'd have in an old office.
And attached to that, I just put different things. So at the moment, I've got a bass string attached to it, and then it's just got a little on-off button and a volume control, and inside is just a little amp, really. So there's a little a circuit board of a little amp, and just operated by a battery, and it's got a little contact mic attached to the back of the box. So it's basically picking up all the sound that I'm making on it. And in my live performance, so I run through this a million effects as well.
Right.
And this is the sort of thing that I'm very sort of drawn to, that sort of more tactile approach to, I don't know if it's music, sound making.
Sound making, but that's an instrument.
Yeah.
It's the same as a guitar,
absolutely,
or a cello, or a violin, or a drum.
Yeah,
I guess.
Absolutely.
And we seem to almost be coming full circle from having noises made in boxes that are completely disembodied back to putting electronic effects over things made from real physical. Simple. That was
absolutely simple.
Box.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we need that. I don't know. I get quite uninspired as well, just staring at a screen and loads of codes. And I use a bit of Maximus P as well, which is, I don't know if you've come across.
I haven't, no.
But it's quite codey. And although the possibilities of things you can do with that are absolutely immense, but just also, I think I need to just get my head out of the screen and go back to just something sort of tactile and tangible.
So tell us about your band, or the band that you're in.
So it's called Frost, and it's me and Steve Lewis, who's in another band called Fujiya and Miyagi. And so together, it's kind of started because actually I did some recordings. So his band, Fujiya and Miyagi, are a band that have been going for about 15 years, and they've got quite a following in France, and they did a French version of one of their songs, and they wanted to sort of do it in a bit of a Bonnie and Clyde, Serge Gainsbourg and c'est Brigitte Bardot. So I sang it with their lead singer in French, also to sort of help his French, I suppose. And then me and Steve realized that we had a lot of similar musical interests, and he wanted to do sort of a side project, and so we just tried a few things out, and so it ended up being this electronic, motoric. We were both at the time, this is a few years ago now, we took because I've got 2 children, and he's got 2 as well, so it took a little while to birth this project.
And a good metaphor.
Yeah, exactly. We were very much listening to, at the time, Fever Ray and The Knife, and who we were listening to as well, Roll the Dice, who are also a Swedish band, quite modular, I suppose. And we're listening to Julia Holter as well, actually a lot of female artists.
Okay, so is there a track that would sum up your sound that we could play?
Okay, probably our first release of that album, which is Crackling on the Wire.
way does that track sum up the sound of the band? What's special about it for you?
Okay, it's bilingual. And not all the tracks are, but I guess that's how my brain works. So that represents it. So it goes from English to French. In this track, some of the vocals that is again being processed through a synthesizer, so it sort of shifts and you don't know if it's a synth or if it's a voice, and it's that sort of like man-machine thing that I'm kind of interested in. How that's sort of the thing that Kraftwerk were doing really well.
That was it, exactly the image I had in my head then, actually. So how does that come across in the live performance?
So live, I process my vocals a little bit, and then I use my iPad for some of it, where I have sort of pre-recorded some of my voice, and then I'm able to sort of like chop it up and sort of play it, just sort of pressing on the iPad at different places, so it sort of like fragments it a little bit.
Wow. And there's just the two of you on the stage?
No, so it was always the two of us on stage, and then because it's very harmonic as well, I do a lot of backing vocals that sort of really build the track using harmony, and this just wasn't possible because it was not just harmony but sort of counterpoint as well, different parts. So we've asked a good friend and fantastic musician called Megan Clifton to join us, so she's adding additional synth parts and doing great harmonies also through loads of processing, and so we've got loads of voices.
Do you play very often now? Do you get many bookings?
But at the moment we're taking a little break because I'm trying to write. So we had our first album coming out that came out a year ago.
And what's the name of the album?
The album's called Matters. Yeah, and it's on a new label called Lost Room Records. Who have been great, and so now we're trying to write a second album. But between the other project and the million other things, so I'm trying not to gig too much, just to be able to focus on the writing part, which is my favorite part.
Does that take quite a lot of time?
It kind of depends. It's very strange. Sometimes it really varies. The first album, I think it took us a couple of years to write half of it, and then 3 weeks to write the rest, or something like that. So it's
Do you find you get flashes of inspiration? And is there a top line that comes into your head, or a melody, or a...
It kind of depends. Like, we're a studio band, and that's my first ever project where we don't jam things out in a rehearsal room. So either I will come up with a riff of some sort, or like a sound, or Steve will come up with a riff as well, or a beat, or something like that, or sometimes I'll come up with a chord progression. It really depends. And then a little bit like my choreographer collaborator, I'll be just sending it over to him, he'll send it back, and then it's only when it's sort of ready to be finished and structures that we all sit together in the studio, but everything else sort of is bounced between us.
So and so when you say you riff things out, what do you use, the piano or the keyboard, or
probably just synths?
And just playing around with the different dials and oscillators?
Exactly, just get a sound of some sort. It usually starts, whatever I do usually starts from a sonic perspective. Sometimes I might start with a chord progression, but more often than not it will start with a sound.
What's one of your favourite tracks from that album?
Maybe Trail Away. And it's very different from the rest of the album. It's a little bit more sort of Twin Peaks sort of, and it's much more ethereal and sort of otherworldly.
So is this where the textures come in?
Yeah,
and the soundscapes.
Exactly.
you mentioned that you compose music for dance.
Yeah.
Tell us how that works. How do you get involved with that, first of all, and also how do you compose for dance?
How do you compose for dance? So I've been working with a few choreographers. One mainly, my main collaborator is based in Tel Aviv, and where there's a very strong contemporary dance scene. And so I used to be a dancer, I think, when I was in my late teens. So that was always a language I understood very well and felt very drawn to. And then so I was asked to score for this piece. But first of all, I wasn't in the same country, so there was that difficulty as well. But the process involved a lot of just being sent videos of rehearsals, so maybe 2-3 minutes of movement. To me to come back with sort of sonic soundscapes that would be a response to the movement, sending that back, then he would be dancing on that and then sending that back. So we would have sort of this like back and forth of sending the material that we had both been inspired from each other's processes.
So very much, as you said, a backwards and forwards, back and forth between the sound and the dance and the music and the dance and co-creating.
Exactly.
Do you do anything for film or?
I have done a little bit. I'm working at the moment on a film for a friend who's based in Bangkok. So hoping to.
And is that the same kind of process?
That's a little bit different because that is more set in time. The dance, obviously, that's being interpreted. So there's it felt more collaborative, I suppose, in that sense. Whereas this is sort of a more finalized moving image that I'm then responding to. So I'm more providing the score as opposed to collaborating.
So I guess that because you can't go then back and change the film.
The edit, exactly. To
match the music.
That's right,
I often wonder that whether how the scene builds on the suspense of the music, or does the music respond to the scene? And
it can be a bit of both. And there's something very interesting as well, where the sort of rule of synchronization, where you watch something and you think that it's exactly synchronized to the sounds, but actually it isn't, and it's your brain that's sort of filling and creating those hit points. I mean, there's a few clear hit points, but often even in things like sonically or musically are not fitting to the rhythm of the picture, we have a tendency of interpreting that, I find. For my solo performances, I use visuals, and they're quite abstract, sort of black and white textures, because my music is very textural. So I asked a videographer to create a visual sort of a representation of what I'm doing in terms of textures. And it's not synced at all to it, but most people who come and see my show say, oh yeah, it was really synced, that's interesting, I could see that. And it's not at all, and I think that's just our brains trying to find patterns.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like a kind of closure, sort of gestalt thing, trying to find the pattern, and you do it without thinking. And of course the music or the sounds that go over a scene in a film can completely change the mood of that.
Oh, absolutely.
And I guess with dance as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's very powerful.
So let's go back to your solo project then. Is there another track that's particularly meaningful to you that you'd like to share with us?
Can I play you something I'm working on at the moment?
That would be wonderful. A real exclusive.
This is I'm not really sure what the title is just yet.
It's that fresh.
It is that fresh. But it's
we'll call it As Yet Untitled.
Yes, exactly. And it was a piece that actually started off as something for my band, and just was a little bit too experimental perhaps for that, and it just didn't find its place there, so it's made its way into my own set. And I've asked a new collaborator of mine who plays pedal steel guitar, beautiful, and so he's provided, we've collaborated on that. He put some parts on it as well, and then I was feeling that there was something missing that it was telling a story and there was a sentiment, and but there was something missing. And a few months ago, I was watching the news whilst I was sort of listening to the mixes, and it was when Donald Trump was doing this rally and said those very offensive things against these 4 women of colors in Congress, and then all the Trump rally was chanting sort of send her back about Ilhan Omar, and there was something that happened when I was basically listening to my piece with that chant that just felt quite overwhelming, and it sort of like made me realize that this kind of was about this and about oppression of women, and so I've used subtly, it's not very obvious, but those samples then in the
So you've used the samples from the chant?
Yes.
Okay. So who's playing the pedestal?
So this is a wonderful player called Shane Minh, who I've started collaborating with.
Mm-hmm. And how did you meet?
I don't know. I need to ask him actually. I got an email one day saying that he heard about me and wanted me to put some electronics and soundscapes on his work, and was interested in doing a collaboration. I listened to what he did, and he came over and we had a little jam, and it was just one of those things where we just totally understood each other musically, and so I started sort of exchanging some
That's great. It's really nice to hear that, because some of the people I've spoken to have had probably more negative experiences with working, especially with guys, where they're not really sure what their intentions are, or things have felt as if they're not on a level playing, a level footing. So it's nice to hear
absolutely
that works.
So
have you had any slightly less positive experiences?
Not so much recently, but like I said earlier on, definitely. I think when probably, I don't know if naive is the right word, but a little bit less cautious, I suppose, in my approaches to people. And so when I was saying in sort of my earlier career, going into studios and being talked down, that always felt quite but no, I've been aware of a lot of women having negative experiences and people taking advantage and assuming certain things, but I've been very lucky on not experiencing that myself.
Because one of the things we try and do on this show is not to focus on those things. But of course
But you can't ignore that.
No. And it's
Absolutely.
actually, we've had feedback that it's where people have talked about issues on the show, that it's actually quite reassuring, in a perverse way, quite reassuring to hear that you're not alone.
Absolutely.
Because one of the problems, of course, is drawing attention. By doing programs, talking to female producers, we're drawing attention to the gender issue. And the one thing I hear from especially guys, but from everybody, is it's just about the music. It's not about gender. It's just about the music. But how do we raise the visibility of female music made by women without showcasing it?
It's very tricky, and the fact that sort of female electronic music is kind of a genre now makes me feel very uncomfortable. But I understand the need to have these events or gigs that are solely for women identifying artists, but I don't know, I'm much more an advocate of the 50-50 rule in bookings and things like that. I think you're also just preaching to the converted when you do that. And you need to raise awareness for the men in the industry that these women are absolutely amazing, and that their gender is meaningless in the discussion. But if you're just going to do a show by women for women, well, we know we're amazing.
Yes, we do.
But there's always this argument. Okay, if you're booking a show, obviously, are you going to purposely put female acts that maybe aren't as popular, or just to have that representation? And I don't know.
How do you feel about that?
I don't know how I feel about that. I've been thinking about that, in the lead up to our conversation, and I feel a little bit in two ways about it, because I think it should always be a meritocracy, I think, ultimately. But then you need to have that representation to inspire younger generations to make it, to make that kind of music. So, I
think you touched upon a really important issue at the beginning of our conversation when you talked about being put off. If merit is something that needs to be actually trained and learned and cultivated and experienced and skills, if the access to that, if like you say, the inspiration is denied to a certain group of people, not necessarily just women, and many other marginalised groups, then it's easier for certain people to look as if they are more talented than others.
But do you think you get inspired to make music, let's say, because of having seen other people, or is it more of an ingrained
Yeah, so certainly research on leadership and things like that suggests that role models are extremely important.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to think that would be any different.
No, definitely.
In the music industry,
I think for me, like so at university, I sort of was exposed to the work of Laurie Anderson, and that has been a big catalyst. I think, looking at her work, and she's also very. I don't want to compare myself to her, but she's gadgety as well in some of her approaches, and I suppose that maybe unconsciously that was a little bit part of the drive to go. You know what? Of course I can do this.
And that maybe that links nicely to the Tech Dissect event, because this show is going to go out the weekend before the Tech Dissect weekend, and it's run by Saffron, who are based in Bristol, and it's about it's a day of music tech workshops for only for women, non-binary and female identifying people, isn't it?
For some reason, I feel differently about that when it's a symposium or a conference, because as opposed to a festival or a gig or something like that. For me, but that's for me, it feels different, because I feel that becomes, I don't like that word, but a safe space really for women to discuss this and have a sounding board. So I think those are actually really important.
What's the safe part of a safe space for music tech education for women?
Well, exactly like you said, the sharing of those negative experiences and things like that. I think that is something that needs to be raised. And those would be the right places as well to sort of sound off and go, you're not on your own. This has happened to me as well, etc., etc. And I think those environments are essential for that and for raising awareness of the state of the music industry, which I think is actually better. I think we are sort of on the up. For me, it feels very different today than it did, say, 15 years ago.
Yeah, that's really positive.
Yeah, I think so.
And in terms of the way that groups of girls and female identifying performers learn, do you think there's anything different in the way that workshops pass those skills on that are specifically for female identifying artists?
So I teach music tech and performance and composition to 16 to 18, but then 18 plus as well. And it's true that our female and female identifying students are very few, and very often when they are in the chorus, they are the vocalists, and that's fine. And I don't want to put up, women. But is there something in the way that they learn that is differently? I think it is, again, going back to what we were saying, this often apprehension of the techie side of things, but also of instrumental music, and I find that even sort of with music theory, or at least my students may be less interested in the sort of nuts and bolts of the theory. They're a little bit less geeky about it, and I don't know why that is. Still something I'm trying to crack. I don't know. I have just recently started doing music classes actually for young children. At the moment, 6-7 years old, and one of my main sort of drive with that is that I want it to be sort of all about music sort of appreciation, listening to things and understanding what that meant maybe, having fun with it, dancing to it, responding to it in different ways, but also getting into the studio, recording, analyzing sort of waveforms. What does it look like when I put my voice down? And sort of seeing that age group, boys and girls, responding to like being in this room, so full of technology.
So they come in here. I wish we should.
Yes.
There will be some pictures up on the In the Kimchi Instagram feed of your studio, so people can have a look, because it's super exciting. What do they say when they come in?
Oh, they're impressed, and there's all the flashing lights as well. And then I tell them all about the rules, because obviously this is all the gear that we actually use, in my practice. So they're very really respectful of it, but very impressed. They love it. Yeah. So we start off in the lounge where there's the piano, and we listen to things, and then when it's the moment to go into the studio, then they get really excited. So, yeah.
And do you notice a difference with girls and boys?
Yes, so that's been very interesting. So, and this is a group of 7 children, and there's 3 boys and 4 girls. And I kind of we've been writing songs together, and I give them a choice. Like they can sing, they can play the keyboards. There's loads of sort of little noise making things as well. They can use a drum machine, and not being prompted, and already it tends to be the girls want to sing or play the keyboards, sort of more organ keys, and the boys want to do drums, and they want to do the more noise making, the synth.
Right.
And that's been fascinating observing, and I've been wondering, have I been sort of pushing this? But I don't think so. So that, yeah, I'm analyzing them, I'm studying their responses and their behaviors.
I've heard other people saying this to me too, about who teach DJing and other kinds of music production courses for children and teenagers, and that the girls have to be almost forced to touch the synth or touch the decks or what have you, when the boys can't wait to get in and play around.
Yeah, it's interesting. You might try to do some forcing of like swapping the outputs, the instruments there.
Because it's difficult, isn't it? Because I try not to be essentialist. It's very difficult because that actually reinforces a division to say girls are more like this and boys are more like that. When even if that is the case, it's not helpful.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what your experience has been as a vocalist, but certainly in the dance music world, the vocalists, they might get listed as a contributor to the track, but often they're not the artist. And so it's a sort of less prestigious position to be in.
Absolutely. I get often sort of teaching young women this thing, I'm just a singer. I'm just this. So I'm not really a musician. I'm just a singer. And that's something I sort of try to make a really big thing about. It's no. We're all musicians. It doesn't matter. Vocals is your instrument. It just happens to be with you at all times. But this is also an instrument. So don't put yourself down.
Let's hear some more of Joanna's beautiful vocals as her instrument. This track is called Keratin, and it's by her band Frost.
Fascinated on the rain, it's
That track is taken from the album Matters, the band's debut album that Joanna's been telling us about. While I was doing the research for this show, I absolutely fell in love with their sound and headed straight over to Bandcamp to buy the album. So shall we talk about Mammy?
Yes.
Which is how I came into contact with you, through a post on social media for Mammy and mothers across the music industry.
That's right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us how that came about.
So I've known Bea for years, and
This is Bea Adamic.
Bea Adamic, who runs Liberty PR, so she ran a PR campaign for Frost, actually, and she was pregnant at the time. And I was very early. Basically, my album came out a month after my baby was born. I did a second baby. I did sort of all the recording, heavily pregnant, and so I was in my early pregnancy when sort of she was about to give birth, I suppose, and working on a PR campaign, and so I think her realizing then afterwards that I was pregnant as well, she had this idea that she wanted to do something for women working in the music industry, and that came to me and said, do you want to do something? I said, absolutely. This was something that really resonated quite strongly. I think for both of us, it really came from speaking with younger women. A lot of the students that I teach are sort of in their early 20s, and a lot of the women I was working with were sort of giving me this impression that they were feeling that they had to choose between a career and between a family life. And that it was sort of like, well, I'm going to try my career until I'm like this age, whatever, and then if it doesn't work out, then I'll build a family. And I was like, whoa, just a minute, like this is not right. And this is not a question that any man would ever ask themselves.
Yep.
So this became really that kind of the drive behind Mammy, kind of going, okay, we want a platform for mums but dads as well. So it's just Pammy sounds not very good. So
but that would be
Mammy,
parents across the music industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So my background is as a performer, and Bea is coming from the PR, so business side of things. So it's very important for us. So that's our equality, sort of making sure that we've got a balanced representation when we book our panelists,
front of house and behind the scenes.
Yeah. And we're still trying to we've had some interest of fathers, but we still haven't managed to actually secure that. It just hasn't happened for some reason. So at the moment, we've only had women, which is a little bit of a shame, because we really we need to have men part of this conversation as well. It's essential. So hopefully,
because they face similar issues, or because they need to realize they need to help more, or
I think a little bit of both, really. And I mean, I know a lot of primary carers who are the fathers, and I don't want them to feel excluded of that conversation. So there's that, first of all, and also because I think this needs to be a common thing. It's not just the moms who need to be fighting for that. It needs to be And Mammy also in French is grandma. So kind of like this idea of being this sort of like nurturing place where kind of look after sort of one another. So we decided that we needed to have sort of this platform for women to sort of share their ideas. So we didn't really know how it was going to start. We had a few sort of like panels. So we asked, and we had amazing response. So we had really fantastic women from, performers, but also across the industry coming into these panels and sharing their experiences, their good ones, their negative ones. And then at the end, we're trying to come out of it thinking, what can we concretely do? What are the things that we want to see coming out of this initiative? So some of the things we'd like to try to get some funding, and I don't know, one of the things that we'd love to see is, for example, childcare at main musical events. So that if you are, an A&R or a booker or someone like that, and you have to go to loads of festivals, then whilst you go and speak to your artist, then you can have like a few moments where you can, you know, safely leave your child with somebody and then come back to them or something like that. That's just sort of one of the thoughts that we sort of had. But the other thing is also really to promote this sort of like positive message that there's some amazing women on stage, behind the scenes, all across the music industry that are making it work. And to show these young women that, yes, you can, you know, like you don't have to sacrifice your personal life, if that's what you want, of course. Not everybody wants a family life. And it's not easy, but it's doable. And I would say that for me personally, my creativity has been fed so much by my pregnancy, my motherhood, my children, way more than it has been sort of blocked by it in any way. So it's been tricky, but it's been so much enriched by my experience with motherhood. I've been feeling so much more focused. I think for me, I probably in my 20s, I was sort of like, it took me a while actually to find my voice as an artist. And I'm amazed sometimes I see my students, they're like 16, 17, 18, and they've already got a real creative voice. And for me, that's been a much, much slower process. I was sort of learning the skills, looking, searching, not finding myself. And it's only kind of recently, really, that I've really found my identity. And obviously that's still an evolving thing. But the focus that motherhood has given me has been incredible for my creativity. And I'm just way more sort of clear in why I'm doing what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and the creative process as a whole.
Yeah, is that a function of the time you have available or something broader than that?
I think that's the main thing. But I think also, as soon as I found out I was pregnant with my first one of the first thing I did instinctively, it's kind of wrap up a lot of the beautiful projects I was involved in, but I didn't really feel were serving my identity. And that just kind of happened. I was like, right, so this is it. I'm stopping this and this and this. And then started working on the things that were really meaningful. And that was maybe knowing that I wasn't going to have as much time, but I don't think I was aware of that. Really.
You have no idea.
No, you've got no idea. So yeah, I think I'm just now in a phase, and I don't know if it's motherhood or just aging or just where I am in my life, where I'm much more in need of doing the things that have got a true meaning to me, and then the time thing is obviously a big factor as well.
Yeah.
But the focus, it's been quite exciting to finally, after searching, being able to experience that better focus in creativity.
So how many events have you organised?
So we've had 2 in Brighton. We've got our next one on the 12th of November at Shoreditch House. Yeah.
In London.
In London, yeah. So this is still quite fresh. And we are looking at starting, we've got some podcasts scheduled in as well.
Great.
So hopefully to sort of try to archive it as well, because there's been amazing conversations that have been had, but that we haven't been able really. And also, again, going back, I can't believe I'm using this word twice now, but the safe space for women. I don't want to record those panels.
Yeah.
We want to be able to, whatever was said, that stays there. It doesn't go out in the public domain. But if we do that as a podcast, obviously, then there's more scope for sharing those things and having that visibility again.
Yeah, and it's really timely that we're having this conversation now, because I went to an interview panel with one of the editors of Mixmag, Duncan Dick, and Charlotte De Witte at ADE last week.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely stunned that the first question she got was from what sounded like a middle-aged guy who very nicely and very innocently just said, it's been fabulous to get to know the human behind the DJ, but you haven't told us anything about whether you have a partner or children. And I couldn't believe that this was something that was deemed perfectly okay to ask a young woman who had not mentioned anything about her family. Yes, it's interesting. How do you combine a heavy touring schedule and family life? But I guarantee you, he would not have asked a guy.
Never.
And it's actually really interesting how the guys manage it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, oh my goodness me.
How did she respond?
To be fair, she just responded completely. She just very nicely answered the question, which was to say that she was single. There was an audible gasp from all the guys in the room. But she then said it's almost impossible to combine to have a relationship when she's doing 3 or 4 gigs every single weekend.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how old she is, but I don't think she's that old. She's probably in mid-20s.
I think so, yeah. I don't know,
but it was the fact that it was not even... It was that the equation of being female with being a mother. Yeah. And that even
the
if you...
interest of, your love life.
Yes. Yeah. Which probably wouldn't be the case the other way around.
No, absolutely. No, so, that would be so odd.
Well, it would feel odd, wouldn't it?
It would feel really odd. And that's what every man needs to ask themselves. Would I ask that question to a male?
Yeah, and I can imagine, probably nobody listening to this show, but I can imagine that many people, and I know many people, men in particular, and women say, oh God, why does it matter? It's not important. But it is important because it's just continually associating you, whether you want children or not, with your reproductive capacity.
Womb. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
right. Yeah. Do you have 1 or 2 pieces of advice for women trying to get started in music production, or mothers?
Okay, well, I guess for women starting in music production, it sounds obvious, but I would say just to kind of give it a go. And what I think would have been very useful for me when I was starting is the array of online tutorials that people have today, and I find that that's really so much less daunting than approaching in a different way. So I would say, just find yourself like a quick tutorial, whether it's on Ableton or on Logic or whatever it is, and just get started and hands-on. And even in the software, there's often really simple sort of tutorials that you can use. So I would just hands-on, give it a go, and don't be too perfectionist. For mothers, I would say come and join us in our conversations for Mummy. So we are mummyuk.com. I think that's what it is, or mummy.co.uk. Check that. I would say that, hopefully, having done this sort of reaching out, it's been amazing to see how many people are responding. So that just shows me that there are, thousands and thousands of women who are doing it and who are making it work.
Where can we hear your music? Where can we buy your music and see you perform?
Okay, so my solo project, it's Joanna Bramli, so with an H and 2 N's, Johanna, and Bramli, Bramli. And so you can find me on my website and then on all the socials, sort of with the Joanna Bramli handle. And my band is Frost, with an umlaut on the O, which makes it very complicated, but that's the Swedish heritage, I suppose, that sort of seep through. And that's Frost Band UK on most of the socials.
Great.
And we're on Spotify and everything.
Thank you so much to Joanna Bramley for that fascinating interview. I really enjoyed my evening over there with her, learning so much. And the one thing that I think I took away from her eclectic range of projects and music is the importance of found sound in electronic production, and how even the most mundane and taken for granted sounds, for example, the human voice, can be fantastically manipulated. And that's very reminiscent of the musique concrète of the early 20th century. So it's really nice to see a kind of low-tech beginnings to a high-tech project. Track listing for the sounds you're about to hear will be on the information area of the SoundCloud page that I upload the Sisu Presents in the Key of She shows to after they've aired on Threads Radio. But for now, until next time, sit back and enjoy an eclectic selection from Joanna Bramley.
My mind explored a labyrinth eyes. Her sun-drenched body lay hypnotized. Perfumed electric garden roused female. But now her laughter turns pale. Dreams gone, just mounting fever in my soul. Within my head the bell seems to go. Past the breathing, heaving hippies bound. Now making love without sound. Without sound. Without sound. Without It never had been made like that before. Only the night heard longing cries for more. Her legs stood firm, the dead wind sighed, come on. Mist fell away, now she's gone.
möchte ich nicht mehr schreien. Alles wäre so klar. Ich möchte ein Eisbär sein, im kalten Polar. Dann müsste ich nicht mehr schreien, alles wäre so klar. Ich möchte ein Eisbär sein, im kalten Polar. Dann müsste ich nicht mehr schreien, alles wäre so klar. Eisbären müssen nie weinen. Eisbären müssen nie weinen. Eisbären müssen nie weinen. Eisbären
George. Oh, Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad. Oh, Superman. Oh, John. Oh, Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad. Hi. I'm not home right now, but if you want to leave a message, just start talking at the sound of the tone. Hello? This is your mother. Are you there? Are you coming home? Hello? Is anybody home? Well, you don't know me, but I know you. And I've got a message to give to you. Here come the planes. So you better get ready, ready to go. You can come as you are, but pay as you go. Pay as you go. And I said, okay, who is this really? And the voice said, this is the hand that takes. This is the hand that takes. This is the hand that takes. Here come the planes. They're American planes, made in America. Smoking or non-smoking? And the voice said, neither snow nor rain, nor blue night shall stay these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed round.
Now for a bit of exercise and meditation as we hand over to Glastonbury for yoga with Christoph.